Well, hello all you wonderful people out there in YouTube land, and welcome to the Texas Special YouTube channel. And this is something I have actually been wanting to do for a while, but haven't really had the ability to till now. So I am starting to finally make some progress on my O-gauge railroad. And we have progressed, as you can tell, to the scenery portion. So if you look right there, you can see I already have the beginnings of some landscaping already down. I am going to walk you through how I am using a combination of foam insulation board and plaster cloth to make variations in the landscape. So step one, obviously the foam board. It needs to be cut to fit the space that you are wanting to work in. So as you can see, I have some foam already placed, but it's not quite the way I want it just yet, so I'm just going to use a regular pocket knife and make a series of shallow cuts in the foam to get the final shape that I want. So I just need to shave a little bit off of there, scoot that over a little bit. That should be good, and that should be good as well. So just that little quick series of cuts. You don't have to go all the way through with one pass. In fact, it's actually better if you don't. Shave a little bit more off of this right here while we're working on it, because I do not want the foam too close to the track, because if the foam is close to the track, then that means that the plaster cloth is going to be on the track. So again, quick series of a few cuts and boom, we're good. Try not to slice ourselves open on camera. Alright, so now the next step is going to be glue. Yes, theoretically the plaster cloth would hold this in place, but I want a little bit more security. So what I'm going to do, I have a big jug of white glue. Now admittedly there ain't much left in it, but it's still more than enough for what I need to do. So, with a regular foam brush, we'll make sure it's cleaned off so that there's a minimum amount of impurities. We're going to take this first section of foam off. Fight with the lid on this bottle of glue, apparently. Stand by. Okay, we're back in action. Nothing a pair of channel locks couldn't handle. So, set that down. Now we will just pour a small dollop of glue. That was more than I wanted, but I can use that down the road. Put the cap back on the glue bottle just to make sure there's no screw-ups. And then we'll just spread this glue like such wherever that foam is going to be sitting. So we'll put the foam back down. Now you can see we got just a little bit of, I guess you could call it overflow. That's fine, that's not a problem. You can see that it's kind of curved up there, so what we're going to do, we're going to use these little pins. Kind of hold this in place, put them in at an angle so that they actually are able to do their job. If you just put them straight down, then they're not really going to do anything. And whenever I put the plaster cloth over this, they should just disappear right underneath the plaster cloth. So remember, you're doing this with the pins, make sure they go in at an angle. You don't want to go straight down because then it's not really doing anything. So we are going to do some more pins on this back side, just for good measure. And then additionally, y'all, I'm going to put some kind of weight over top of this to hold it down. Joys of being short. And we'll do the same thing. We'll just add an angle, insert, and again over here. So now the next step we're going to do is this guy. We're going to do another little dollop of glue to hold that guy down. Take our handy dandy trusty brush, spread it around. Now this does not have to be too overly thick, given that this is merely to hold it in place and keep it from shifting around too much once you start draping plaster cloth over top of it. So we're going to go back with our pins. And do the same thing one more again. So we'll do at an angle, hold it down, at an angle, to hold it down, and then two more on the other end. Now I'm basically going to be repeating the same steps all the way down the line. So now that you've seen that, I can shut the camera down, and this will possibly go a little bit faster because as I'm sure you know from if you've ever attempted to do anything yourself on camera, trying to do stuff on camera for whatever reason just makes stuff take longer than it absolutely needs to. Alright, now that we've allowed this time to cure, it's on to the next phase, which admittedly can be a little messy, which is why I've removed the trap. So, we have our plaster impregnated cloth. Now you can get this in from a variety of different manufacturers within the hobby. So, to start with, we're going to get the ends of the hills. Doing this, ironically, does generate the least amount of mess. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to start off this way, and I'm going to bring it all the way to the edge here of the track, and that allows for the terrain feature, once it's done, to have sort of a natural slope. So I'll measure how much I need and then make my cut, set the rest of it aside. And then just dip it in the water. Dip it, real quick submerge, let it get good and wet, and then bring it back out. Try not to let it double over on itself too much. If you do, it'll be kind of a pain in the butt to get it to the way it needs to be, back flat. and then try and drape it as evenly as possible so that it lays relatively flat. Now don't worry too much about this. We're going to build this up in layers as we go. That'll be the next cut. And this stuff is fairly easy to work with. It's fairly forgiving. But you are going to get your hands a little dirty. So we'll dip this. And continue on until we have the whole hillside covered. Alright, so if you did this right, this should be the finished result. Now obviously, your terraform is probably going to look a little bit different than mine, but same general concept. While there is no truly right or wrong way to do this, a couple of key things to keep in mind when you're using plaster cloth to make, landforms, land masses and whatnot. Minimize the number of locations where there's large, obvious gaps in between layers. Number two, multiple layers. Use multiple layers. And number three, don't have too large of an unsupported area of plaster cloth. With adequate support in most spots, you can get away with 1 or 2 layers. There are some spots on here that it just could not be helped, so I had to use 3 or 4 layers. And me personally, I like a nice, hard, rigid shell when I'm using this plaster cloth. So I like to overbuild it a little bit sometimes, but it's for a good reason. Over-engineering is never a real bad thing. So we have all of the gaps in the foam filled. We have all of the large noticeable gaps in the plaster cloth. They've been taken care of. The next step in this process is going to be painting this plaster cloth a believable earth tone in case your ground cover flakes off or breaks off, or you have spotty coverage on your ground cover, there's still a believable earth tone underneath to where it looks like it's just exposed mud or dirt. Which in this case, I'm going to be using this apple barrel nutmeg brown. It's available from Walmart. I believe this bottle was like $4. It's an 8-ounce bottle. I've got 3 of these, so that should be more than enough to cover these 2 land masses here. And then once this is dry, I'll start that process of painting it. And once the paint is dry, I'll allow about 24 hours for this to cure. I'll allow about 24 hours for the paint to cure. And then once the paint is fully cured, I will reinstall the track, and we'll be back to being able to run trains again. Then I'll start working on the adding the grass and whatnot. I've already got my ground foam staged over there in that corner near the defect detector, so we'll be ready when that time comes. All right, so the plaster is mostly set up. Well, set up enough that I can start doing this. Now we are going to apply the base coat, which will help the scenery kind of blend in, I guess you could say. And as I mentioned earlier, we are using the Apple Barrel Nutmeg Brown, the 8-ounce bottles that are available at Walmart for a fairly reasonable price in their craft section. And no, for the record, they did not pay me to say that. It is what it is, and that's how it happened to work out. I like the Nutmeg Brown because it gives a good earthy color once it's dried, and does a very nice job of simulating the clay that you find both in East Texas and in the majority of the South Central Texas area where I'm from. So I'm just going to paint pretty much the majority of this. I'm not worried about getting all of it completely covered, simply because a fair amount of this stuff down here on the on the baseboard of the layout, number one, is going to be covered by track, and number two, that is going to be just regular regular grass and whatnot. So, and you don't need to get a nice solid even coat all the way around. You just need just basic coverage. That way it, like I said, it gives you a nice base coat, I guess you could call it, pigmentation underneath. That way, if your scenery starts to crack or you miss a spot or two during the process of adding grass and vegetation and whatnot, it's not as noticeable versus just applying it straight to a white plaster, surface. Additionally, the paint also helps tone down a lot of that sponge effect that just bare plaster has with regards to trying to put down, your glues for the scenery process. Because this just plain plaster, if you try to apply scenery to this as it sits, it'll soak up a lot of that glue, because the plaster wants to interact with water. That's how it does its job. That's why it works the way it does. So I'm just going to get down in all the nooks and crannies and just try to get nice even coverage on this plaster to, like I said, knock down the whiteness of it, and add a layer of kind of like a moisture barrier, so that when I do come in to add grass and trees and such, it the glue doesn't just soak straight into the plaster. And I'll be doing the same thing to this side as well. So you saw what I was doing. I'm basically going to be doing the same thing on the other side. All the while I'm going to be double checking my work, making sure that I have as much of the plaster covered as possible. So there's really no need to film me doing, both sides. So this is going to be the end result, what it looks like. You can see it's got a nice earth tone to it. The paint on this side is already starting to dry and cure, and the paint on this inner cut will definitely be cured and dried. I may or may not add another coat. As you can You see what I'm talking about with that sponge effect there. But overall, this will help fill the gaps in both the exposed foam and help, create kind of a moisture barrier for the plaster itself to keep it from absorbing, over absorbing the glue. If done right, whatever glues you use to put down your grass and your scenery and ground cover will adhere to the paint rather than the plaster. Okay, time to add grass. So I have my trusty white glue, dishwashing fluid, dishwashing soap, and water mix in the scenic spray bottle. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to spray down this nicely painted landform here. I'm going to spray down everything that's been painted. Get a nice coating of glue on here. Some people will say, you put the scenery down, put the grass and whatnot down first and then spray the glue. That's fine if that's how you want to do it. But this method has worked for me in the past several times. This is the way that I like to do it. And when you're done, the end result should look something like that. So I'll just spray all this down, give it a good spritz, good coating with glue. Another benefit to this is it'll also kind of, get that paint good and wet, and that'll help it stick as well. I like this craft paint that Walmart sells. It's good, it's cheap, and it comes basically, it comes in the right color that I want. The problem with it is that it dries rather quickly, so you don't really get to, especially if you're working in a large area, you don't really get to enjoy the benefits of potentially using the paint to help adhere your scenery. The white glue that I use is regular old Elmer's white glue. Of course, it doesn't have to be Elmer's. Any white glue really will do the trick. And there's nothing really fancy to it. It's about 1/4 white glue to 3/4 water, and the rest is a few drops of dishwashing soap to help break up the surface tension of the water, so that it really flows and adheres a little bit better. And then once the water evaporates out, that leaves behind the glue, which is holding down your scenery. And I will do this all the way around till I get the coverage I want, which is essentially all of the brown, or as much of it as possible, until this hill is covered. And there will be a little bit of brown showing through. That's fine, because nowhere in nature is there no dirt or clay or any of that other stuff showing through in a field or anything like that. So yeah, that's perfectly acceptable. And actually, it's realistic to have a little bit of the brown showing through. But painting this before applying the glue, like I did, any ground foam, because that's basically what this is, dyed bits of foam, any ground foam that does not apply or doesn't stick, it'll just show what looks like dirt underneath, dirt or mud or however you want to categorize it. which is a nice little benefit of doing this the way that I did it. We'll let that sit for a minute, and then I'll come back through and give it another spritz with just regular old water. And that'll help tamp down the loose bits on top. You can see that loose stuff blowing off, and now it's kind of settling down. That's what I want. And again, this is just regular water. There's nothing special about it. Now I do have to be careful over here because I have a little in-scale transformer for the park train. And of course I have the defect detector right there on main track 1. So doing this with a fine mist type spray head. And then I'm going to take that same spray head and I'm going to go right back over with the white glue mixture. I'm actually going to dilute it down just a little bit more, just to cut down on some of the clumpiness. I'm going to use the water bottle there you saw me holding, and pour what's left of that water bottle into this, some of what's left into the water bottle in with this glue mixture to further dilute it down just a little bit more so that it doesn't gunk up my my tip on this spray bottle. Shake it around, kind of help it dilute some more. When you're doing this with the water, you want the glue to be real runny. You don't want it to be too gloopy or too thick. You want it to be good and runny. That way it gets down in the cracks and crevices in between the individual bits of foam. Otherwise, it's not going to do what you want. It's just going to kind of blow everything around. Another alternative, if you don't want to deal with potentially clogging spray bottle heads, is put the mixture in a regular white glue bottle, and you can just dribble it at your discretion wherever you feel like you need some glue. This is a little bit more of a precision type method. This is really good for getting into areas where there's a lot of material built up, where you're trying to fill out some crevices or whatnot. Takes a little bit of time, a little bit of extra time, but this is also a good way to go if you're not really in a hurry, which, I mean, the whole point of the hobby is to kill time anyway, right? So you just need to be careful not to let it drip, too quickly or spend too much time in one little area, because then you will disturb the ground foam. And while this is a little bit more labor intensive, like I said, it does afford you more control over where the glue is going versus just spraying willy-nilly, especially if you have sensitive electronics like a defect detector right near where you're working, or an in-scale model train transformer. This is a really good method to alleviate some of those stresses that you would have trying to work with those items nearby. And I'll do the same thing all the way around on that coat, on that cut right there. I'm going to refill my glue bottle and get back to it. One final thought. When you spray water on the scenery like that, get it to the point of saturation, because that allows the glue, even though you put the dishwashing detergent in there to break the water tension, the surface tension of the water, the really flooding it to the point of saturation, that allows the water and the glue to just flow right on in there, because if there's already water in there, there's no surface tension that needs to be broken. It's still a good idea to add the dishwashing detergent just in case you under saturate a spot or two, but just a clarification on that's usually why you do it. And now in about 24 hours or so, once I'm done with all of this, I will have a scenic cut newly installed on the South Texas Railroad, and we will begin working on, when I get a chance, I'll begin working on just the regular grass and whatnot in this area, on either side of the tracks, over here by the park. This corner is the next area on the railroad that's going to get the scenery work. My plan is to just kind of get these outlying areas here, because they're easily reachable basically, and then once I have this far end of the railroad here done, then I'm going to start working on the interior portions of the railroad where I would actually have to crawl up on top of the railroad to gain access to do my work. Always have some semblance of a plan when you're building a railroad, because trust me y'all, there's nothing more frustrating than getting scenery done and then having to go back and redo it because you had to mess it up climbing over it to get to a scene that you forgot you were going to do, or you jumped the gun and forgot you still needed to go work that area, and then, dadgummit, now I got to redo half my town. And if it sounds like I'm speaking from experience, it's because I am. With the glue, with the scenery material here saturated like this, there really is no such thing as overuse of glue. Only danger you really have is staying too long in one point and letting too many drops fall on the same exact spot, which, as I said earlier, disturbs the scenery material and dislodges it from where you have put it. With the, putting down the base coat, that's not that big of a deal, but it is still annoying. Just make sure you work methodically, slowly, take your time to get all of the areas a good even coating of this glue and water mixture. And if you do that, then you should have some very satisfactory results when it's all said and done. If you got one or two spots where the scenery medium runs like it just did for me right there a second ago. Again, no big deal. That's what we did the undercoat for. And if we look at the, I'm going to move the camera here and move some of my scenery stuff out of the way. That I'm very happy with. Grass does not grow perfectly evenly on an inclined plane. There's going to be some exposed mud and whatnot, so that I'm good with. I'm going to let this dry, and then I'll be able to put the track back in service, and I'm going to have to clean off the ends of the track near where I worked, because some of it got plaster and a little bit of glue on it. But that's no big deal. That's fine. That's an easy fix. So that is how you build cuts and landforms with foam and plaster cloth. Now you can do just straight foam. You can do just straight foam and no plaster cloth whatsoever. It does generate, the problem is, while the plaster cloth generates a mess, working with the foam, only foam, just gluing and carving and stacking the foam, that creates a mess that, if you can believe it, is even more of a pain in the butt to deal with if you've never done that before. Because static electricity is no joke, y'all. It really complicates things greatly. So to clean off the track, I'm going to just use my good old trusty alcohol wipes. Get everything off that I can. Just clean off the pins and the rail heads. And I'm not too concerned about cutting everything back together, putting everything back together tonight, because the phone should be ringing for me to go to work soon. So, but by the time we come to the next scenery video, we'll the track will be back together. In the next how-to, I'm going to show you how I do large portions of just regular old plain scenery. Basically the grass that's right there in front of the camera. I'm going to show you how I did that when I do my next scenery tutorial for the next how-to video. And I'm probably going to be doing these little how-to videos as I progress along the railroad in place of regular run videos, or at least once a month. Thank y'all for watching. Hope you found it entertaining and informative. Texas Special out.